How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Sim-Alot Makes, where today we're making Pesto Alfredo, or creamy Pesto Alfredo, whatever you'd like to call it. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to get one large stock pot half full with water and get it boiling. Grab your favorite long noodles. I'm using spaghetti. You can use fettuccine or linguine if you wish. Go ahead and toss those on into the pot. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your favorite medium to large saucepan. You're going to need it bigger. Trust me, don't use a small one. Even though you're not making a lot of sauce here, you still need a big one. So use a medium-sized pan and go ahead and get that heated up with some butter on in there. Then grab your favorite weird tongy-like thing that you have to stir up your noodles. Mine happens to have these weird fork things on it. Yeah, here you go. Look at this weird thing. Yeah, isn't that strange? But anyway, go ahead and get that mixed up. Now, with the butter, you're going to want to use about 2 tablespoons of it. I'm using full-fat salted butter. You can use unsalted margarine, or if you would like, for a richer sauce, you can even use more butter. But I happen to be using 2 tablespoons in mine. So go ahead and let that get melted up and go ahead and give it a little bit of a shake to make sure that it's melting completely here. And while you're doing that, notice that you're an idiot and you left some of the wax paper on there. So just go ahead and get that off with your delicate fingy. Good job, Sim. Now, what you're going to do is let this melt completely. Once it's almost melted all the way, you're going to go ahead and give this more of a violent shake. Why are you doing this? Because you want to make sure that the entire bottom of the pan is covered in butter, because what you're doing now is you're about to make a roux. So you're going to put flour into this pan. If you do not have the bottom completely covered in butter, the flour will burn. So go ahead and get that in there, and then grab your favorite wire whisk and start whisking this to get this horrible sound. All right, now that I'm done killing your eardrums, make sure that you get that completely incorporated, because like I said, you do not want to burn your flour here. It will make it taste horrible. What we are in essence doing is making a bechamel sauce. This bechamel sauce, what you're going to need to do is, once your butter and flour are incorporated together, add a half a cup of milk to it. Okay, this is going to look really soupy when you first start. You'll notice I let my butter go a little bit more. You can do that. It makes it have a little bit of a nuttier flavor. Now, keep on stirring this until the milk is completely incorporated with the flour and butter. Like I said, 1/2 of a cup of milk to start with. Go ahead and just get that, keep stirring it up, and watch the magic happen. As you're stirring, you're going to notice that this is going to get thicker and thicker until it starts turning into a paste-esque consistency. Once it is completely pasty, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and grab yourself another 1/2 cup of milk. Perfect. And dump about half of it. So 1/4 of a cup of milk on in there to loosen it up a little bit more. So go ahead and get that all mixed up, because you want it to be a little bit thinner before you add the cheese. Now, with a bechamel, you can add nutmeg if you would like. I am not a nutmeg guy unless it's in my eggnog, but if you want it in there, you can. About a pinch will do you. Do not add too much. Otherwise, it will taste like cheesy eggnog, and nobody likes that. So go ahead and just keep on getting that stirred up to make sure it's completely incorporated. It might be a little lumpy to start. Don't worry about it. Just keep mixing it. Now, why a bechamel? When you're making a bechamel, what in essence what you are doing is you are now floating flour molecules inside of fat and milk, and you are making more or less a roux. If you were just to try to take standard milk and dump, say, this 2/3 of a cup of Parmesan cheese that I have here, any will do. I'm just happen to be using Kraft, but go ahead and dump that on in there and try to stir it up. It would turn into a big clumpy mess, where instead, because you have the flour in there, you are going to be stirring it, and it will actually turn into a sauce. Now, this is where that other 1/4 cup of milk comes in. As you're making a mess while you're stirring this, just go ahead and keep on stirring it up. Sim, can you make any more of a mess on the stove? Thanks there, buddy. Go ahead and get that completely stirred in and incorporated, and notice that it's getting really, really thick. So you're going to add your last 1/4 cup of milk in there, which is then going to thin out a little bit, and it's going to turn it into more of a sauce-like consistency. It's still going to be quite thick. Don't worry about that. More on that in a second. Make sure you turn off your heat at this point, because you don't want the sauce cooking anymore, because you will end up burning it. And after you do that, go ahead and add 1 teaspoon of granulated garlic in there, or freshly chopped garlic. I use freshly chopped garlic, better flavor and not as salty. Once that's completely stirred in like magic, what you're going to do is you're going to grab your favorite pepper grinder and grate, I would say about 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper on in there. More black pepper to your taste, so more or less depending on how you want it. Go ahead and get that stirred in there completely. While this is getting stirred in here, I'm going to kind of tell you guys what we're going to be doing next. So even though this looks a little thick, at this point you have a fairly good tasting Alfredo sauce that you can use really for any recipe. If you wanted to grab your pasta and toss it on in there while I'm over there seeing if it's done. Oh, nope, not quite yet, so it's going to have to sit a little bit longer. But you could use this as an Alfredo sauce at this point, or add other cheeses, maybe Gruyere, Gouda, something like that, maybe even Romano if that's what you'd like to. But at this point, you have more or less an Alfredo sauce. But this is where we are going to be turning it into pesto Alfredo. Now, pesto is nothing more than basil, olive oil, some nuts, and maybe some Parmesan cheese, depending on what you get, and garlic. But in other words, grab your favorite basil pesto. You can go get a jar of it. Ooh, nice whisking there, Sim. Your whisk is falling over like magic. Go ahead and toss that in there and keep your whisk from falling into that flame over there. You're going to use about 2 teaspoons of pesto in this recipe, so go ahead and just toss that in there, grab your whisk, and then go ahead and stir that all in, and it's going to make it look a little bit more, well, chunky, but that's okay, because that basil is going to be adding a ton of flavor to this dish, and trust me when I say this really does add a lot of flavor to your dish. So now that you have some nice green specks in there, what you're going to do is you're going to grab your fully cooked pasta. Once it is fully cooked, yep, check your sauce. Always good to make sure it tastes good. You can either move your frying pan to your pasta or move your pasta off the flame. I would prefer you move it off the flame. Then scoop the pasta out without draining it. Just scoop it and dump it right in there. Now, before you say, Sim, this is going to water down your sauce, that's the point. You want to water down the sauce a little bit because the noodles are going to be sucking up the moisture that is inside of your cream sauce here. So adding the pasta in there and getting a little bit of the pasta water is not a big deal. In fact, what you're going to do is you're going to sit here and you're going to jostle this around to make sure the noodles get completely covered in your bechamel cheese pesto delicious sauce here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grab about 1/4 cup of your pasta water, because this is still just a little too thick, and add that on in there as well to loosen up this sauce a little bit more. Once that's in there and you have it starting to stir all together, just give it a couple minutes and just take about maybe 1 minute straight of just stirring it to make sure that all of the noodles, because we are working with longer pasta here, to get incorporated. Also, if you guys would like, you can go ahead and use other types of pasta as well. You do not only need to use long pasta. I just prefer using it in this type of recipe. But once this is completely mixed together, all the pasta is completely covered, make sure that your stove is off completely. Go ahead and grab your nicely mixed up pasta here and go over and plate. Now, this is definitely my first time doing this, and I didn't forget to turn the camera on, but what you're going to do is grab your favorite large plate or bowl, depending on what you prefer to use, and go ahead and just scoop your pasta right on there, trying to do this cool restaurant twirl thing and absolutely failing at it. But what you can see with our slowed down time here is that the pasta is just falling all over itself. It's very creamy. It's all completely covered in this cheese sauce, and you can see the bits of basil in there as well. As for how does it taste? Well, it actually tastes absolutely fantastic. In fact, I liked it so much that I went in immediately for a second bite and had to get more. I would suggest you guys make this in large quantities for your entire family. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you all so much for watching.